Lisa's got a Zoom crasher too. A major Zoom crash.
That's cute. Is there a way to show everybody that's on the video, or?
Good question, Nancy.
Yes, the way to do that is you go up to the top of your screen on the right-hand side, and you'll see something that says Gallery View.
Okay.
You point your cursor there, and you just click on that, and then you'll see everybody.
Okay.
I don't see it.
Oh,
There you go.
just up in the right-hand corner, up at the top.
Yeah.
If there's enough people, you end up with 2 pages and you have to click right to see them or click left to come back.
Okay.
You know, just, you know, we have a hymn that says, I'm going to keep on till I find it.
Yeah, story of my life. Your brain is busy.
Oh, that was
Oh,
flimsy. That was flimsy of it.
so are we going to be about 6 feet apart so that if we have our masks off while we're reading, we'll
You
be
know,
safe
you
enough?
guys are a lot safer than me. I'm the one who's around a lot of people.
Oh,
so I'll just
okay.
keep mine on.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not worried about you giving it to me. I'm worried about me giving it to you. You
Okay.
guys are probably pretty much keeping to yourselves, I would
Yeah.
assume.
Well, you know, in my office, I'm pretty safe.
Oh, oops. Oh, shoot. Ian, I accidentally muted you. I'm having a hard time getting you unmuted. Sorry, my bad.
We were just having a typical pandemic conversation about.
Sorry, everyone. I
No,
thought I
that's
could
fine.
just unmute them easily, and I was like, it's probably because it's recording.
Nope, you have to, you pretty much have to unmute yourself, I think. So that's good to know. Should we open up with announcements?
We should. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalists of Sheridan's Zoom worship service. I'm Victor Asher. I'm the coordinator for worship. I guess I'm the chair of the worship committee, and I'm accompanied by my sweet wife, Janet, who is coordinating this month's theme, and this will be the last of the theme on harmony. Next month, we'll have the theme of gratitude, and that'll be coordinated by Jules. We're also accompanied this morning, Janet and I, by Ian, who is ably assisting us, as he often does, with the Zoom and with the music. And I believe I've talked Ian into reading a story for us this morning. And so I'll have a small announcement, and then I'll invite others. We're planning to have meditation at the fellowship at 7, but if you're not planning to come, would you please let me know so that we would cancel? And maybe on snowy days, just routinely let me know if that's the plan that we would cancel. I think that Ian has an announcement, and but in the meantime, as he comes closer to the mic, does anybody else have an announcement?
I just wanted to let everyone know that the weavers and spinners will not be there today. They were supposed to, but decided because of the increased COVID risk that they weren't going to meet this month.
Thanks, Ramona. My announcement is this week we will light your virtual candles for you, and the plan is to continue to light a candle here for you. But in the future, we had the nice idea, Grace actually had the nice idea that if you would like to if you have any kind of votive for some kind of candle of your own, that you could symbolically light a candle for your joy or concern at home along with us, as long as you're following proper fire safety guidelines. That's a good disclaimer, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I say you're covered.
So if you had something on hand, I guess, and you wanted to do that this morning, but don't feel obliged, but just to make the announcement that starting next week, we want to encourage people to do that because that might be a nice feature.
Are there other announcements this morning? Please feel free. If there are none, then I will read some opening words. And I guess I'll say before I begin that this service was prepared together with my lovely wife, Janet. And so we are symbolizing harmony as we present this morning.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
I just wasn't able to unmute myself there briefly. So I just want to introduce my mother who's visiting and joining us today. Her name is Lynn.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome. I'm here from Vermont. So I bring you greetings from the other side of the country.
We're so glad to have you with us this morning.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So some opening words. Let there be joy in our coming together this morning. Let there be truth heard in the words we speak and in the songs we sing. Let there be help and healing for our disharmony and despair. Let there be silence for the voice within us and beyond us. Let there be joy in our coming together. And now please enjoy some morning music.
Like to build the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves. I'd like to teach the world sing with perfect harmony. I'd like to hold it in my arms and keep it company. I'd like to see the world for once all standing hand in hand and hear them echo through the hills.
That little trip down memory lane comes from a Coca-Cola jingle, 1971, that was kind of a phenomenon and turned into that folk song. So thank you for bearing with us on that. What little disharmony Victor and I had in the preparation of this program had to do with whether or not this was a good idea to use that song, but I hope it gave you a little smile. We're turning now to the chalice lighting. We are people of all ages who enter this space, bringing our joys and our concerns. We come together in hope. We greet each other warmly with our voices and our smiles. We come together in peace. We light the chalice to symbolize our interdependence and our unity. We come together in harmony. We share our growth and our aspirations. We come together in wonder. We share our losses and our disappointments. We come together in sorrow. We share our concern and our compassion. We come together in love. We come to this place bringing our doubts and our faith. We come together as seekers. We sing and pray and listen. We speak and read and dream. We think and ponder and reflect. We cry and laugh and center. We mourn and celebrate and meditate. We strive for justice and for mercy. We come together in worship. And now we invite you forward, or we invite you electronically to share a joy or a concern, and Victor will light a candle for your thoughts.
Are they unmuted?
I'll share a joy here, a joy for just the wonder that children bring to this kind of weather. They don't gripe and complain about it. They just get out there and start making snow forts and snowmen, and it's quite wonderful to be around them. So.
Not to be political, but I will light a candle in the hope that we have an orderly electoral process.
I guess I have one. I lit a candle for a dear old friend who lives in Minot, North Dakota, teaches at the university there. And as you probably know, the virus is hitting North Dakota, just slamming it. If it were a country, it would have the highest rate of infection in the world at this time. She says it's just a mess. And so her son has had COVID. And so I light it for her and the inhabitants of North Dakota and South Dakota and Idaho and all the places where the virus is just exploding. And without anyone else responding, if you're raising your hand, we can't see the whole screen. So just sing out if you have a candle to light. But if we don't hear, we will go ahead and light a candle for thoughts and words unspoken that we carry in our hearts.
They're saying they're muted.
Oh.
Let me go check. You should be able to unmute yourself in the bottom corner of your screen. Let me see if that's not the case.
We're okay now.
That you're unmuted now?
Oh, somehow this got deselected. you should be able to unmute yourselves now. I'm not sure how that got turned off.
I need to light a candle for Bruce and for our entire family. His sister Claire has been taken off of dialysis, and so we're in the process of that long final journey. Bruce is with her right now, and we're very lucky that the greenhouse allows family to come in masked and be with her. So just want to hold Bruce and Claire in our thoughts today.
And that's Jolynn sharing that.
That was Jolynn.
Yes. You and your family are certainly in our thoughts.
I'd like to light a candle for my cousin Jean, who was able to leave the hospital and return to the nursing home that is home for her, and she's in good spirits and doing well.
And that's Bill Bradshaw's voice. So we will add you to our thoughts and put you in our heart as well.
All right, I guess we'll move on, and Ian has a story to share.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. This story is from Doorways to the Soul, 52 wisdom tales from around the world. And this is titled The Monk and the Scorpion. Once a monk sat on the banks of the Ganges River with one of his students. As they watched the water flow by, a large scorpion making its way along the steep banks fell into the water and began to struggle and drown. Without hesitation, the monk reached in and pulled the scorpion from the water. As he placed it on the bank, it stung his hand. Several minutes later, this same scorpion fell again into the river and commenced to drown. Again, the monk reached in and again was stung as he set the scorpion on the bank. A third time, the scorpion fell, and a third time, it was retrieved by the monk with the same results. The student could no longer restrain himself. "Master," he asked, "why is it that you keep saving that beastly scorpion from drowning? Can't you see that it's just going to sting you?" "Yes, I know it's going to sting me," laughed the monk. "It's the dharma of a scorpion to sting, but it is my dharma to save."
Thank you for reading that, Ian. And now we'll have a moment of meditation. I will read a meditation that comes from Buddhism. It's called a loving kindness meditation. And after I finish reading it, we'll have a period of silence, and that will be followed by singing together Spirit of Life. May I be well, safe, and peaceful. May I be free from the suffering of fear, anger, and ill will. May I find forgiveness for the harm we bring to one another. May I cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and joy. May I live in peace and harmony with all beings. May you be well, safe, and peaceful. May you be free from the suffering of fear, anger, and ill will. May you find forgiveness for the harm we bring to one another. May you cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and joy. May you live in peace and harmony with all beings. May we be well, safe, and peaceful. May we be free from the suffering of fear, anger, and ill will. May we find forgiveness for the harm we bring to one another. May we cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and joy. May we live in peace and harmony with all beings. May all be well, safe, and peaceful. May all be free from the suffering of fear, anger, and ill will. May all find forgiveness for the harm we bring to one another. May all cultivate loving kindness, compassion, and joy. May all live in peace and harmony with all beings.
I think I failed to say good morning to you earlier, so good morning, and glad to see each other together again this morning. And Victor and I did collaborate on this.
Fix your microphone.
Oh, fix it lower? Okay. Victor and I did collaborate on this talk and had a lot of fun doing it, and had some serendipitous pieces of information show up from random sources in our life as we did it that were very helpful to putting this together. So we hope you enjoy it. I'm going to read the first half, and then Victor will read the second half. It's called A Country in Search of Harmony. How are UUs called? Here we are, 9 days out from a presidential election that's equally longed for and dreaded. How will our civic rancor be resolved? If it isn't, what is the nation in for? Civil war? Layered over it all is a worldwide pandemic that has been denied and mishandled every bit as much as the environmental crisis by the party in power, our current president and his cronies and toadies. After 4 interminable years of an administration hell-bent on consolidating power at the expense of democracy itself, our country is so polarized, it may be impossible to convince half the population that the election is fair and conclusive. Most UUs hope this election brings change. Here in our very red state, we try to be respectful and tolerant of the opinions of members of the majority, but chafe at the reality that we are not treated with the same consideration. With luck, we'll live through another peaceful transition of power over the next several months. But even with luck, what's a good Unitarian to do? How are we called by our faith, our commitment to our principles, and each other to conduct ourselves in the months and years ahead? What is the right path? Where do we go to, quote, go high when they go low, unquote? And how do we care for each other along the way? It is one thing to tolerate the views of others, all views being equal, but we know all views are not equal. Some points of view are constructive, some seem cruel or selfish. As Victor and I thought about harmony as a spiritual and ethical dimension of civic life, we turned to an exploration of evil among liberal theologians and found a high degree of consensus in their opinions. Most ministers, including the prominent UU theologian Rebecca Ann Parker, wrote that deliberate disruptions of harmony in human affairs were evil. She describes acts as evil if they undermined life-giving relationships of love and justice in human affairs, leaving tragedy and broken hearts in its wake. Political leaders who deliberately foment mistrust and strife among cultural groups are choosing to behave in ways that can be legitimately described as evil. They know what they are doing and continue doing it for personal gain, despite the resulting long-term negative effects on civic life and the good of all. They should be held accountable for these actions. Many who are influenced by them and support them may be less complicit. They may act out of fear, ignorance, or anger, and are much less likely to benefit from policies made by such leaders. Their misguided support may not rise to the level of evil unless they resort to violence. We are concerned that the rising levels of tension and animosity existing within our society today, goaded on by the president, will result in increasing outbreaks of violence between groups and even at the polls. So how did we start down this road of answering evil with violence? It is partly raw instinct, but it is also embedded within our long Judeo-Christian history. Rebecca Ann Parker wrote a book chapter entitled "Deliver Us from Evil," in which she pointed out a serious problem with Christian theology as it relates to evil. According to the traditional Christian view, evil is symbolized in Satan and is represented in the form of the snake in the Garden of Eden story. The snake, Satan, persuades evil to disobey God's commandment and to eat fruit from the tree of knowledge. And of course, Eve then convinces Adam to eat the fruit as well. This is the basis of original sin, and it affects all people born afterwards in the Christian frame. Much more evil follows in the subsequent chapters of the Hebrew Bible: wars, promiscuity, and other failures to obey God's commandments. Christians believe that God sent his son Jesus into the world to absolve humans of their sin and to overcome evil. The crucifixion became the solution. In this theology, evil exists in the form of the biblical snake or Satan. Evil here is the force that opposes God and tempts people to do bad things. In other words, evil comes from a source outside of humanity. Parker points out two problems with this theology. First, Jesus' death on the cross to atone for the sins of humanity unfortunately results in the Christian church sanctioning violence. If God required that Jesus be killed to bring about salvation of the human race, it appears to make it permissible and perhaps even laudable for humans to respond to evil with violence. Christ on the cross is a violent image. Attributing evil to Satan, that's her second point, attributing evil to Satan, a being or evil spirit outside of humans, absolves us of our responsibility to deal with the evil we do to each other and to the earth. We would add a third problem with Christian theology as it relates to the problem of evil and disharmony. There is a strong tendency in the Christian religion to focus on the hereafter. The faithful are able to find harmony and peace in heaven. It is left to God to solve the problems of conflict and disharmony in the world. Reverend Parker proposes an alternative theology, Unitarian Universalism, which says that humans are responsible themselves for the evil we do. The evil exists within us. Victor and I worked with combat vets who often expressed how they felt uniquely evil for the deeds they committed during the wars. We would say to them, and we believe, they were not uniquely evil. They were just in a situation where the expectation, or indeed the obligation, was they were to kill. We don't need to avoid God's wrath for disobeying him. That is not how we solve the problem of evil. Rather, we overcome evil by embracing the powers of good that exist within and around us. We UUs believe that during his life, Jesus promoted goodness and opposed evil. We believe his death was the result of human-caused evil and not because God wanted it. We do not believe the violent death of Jesus will protect us from doing bad things to each other. Violence begets violence. It does not eliminate it. Liberal theology sees Eve's rebellion not as evil, but as an expression of curiosity, boldness, and a willingness to risk punishment for the sake of obtaining knowledge. Just because Eve disobeyed the male God does not make her evil, but rather, quote, a brave questioner, unquote. She questioned authority in order to grasp the apple of learning. This story is reminiscent of the schoolgirls of Iran who disobeyed the Taliban in furthering their learning. The belief in a God up above who makes laws for people to follow and then punishes those who disobey is outmoded and justifies animosity between people of differing beliefs. It needs to be replaced by the positive life force in our midst as humans that we can choose to embrace. Just as the power of choice to engage in evil resides within, so do the inclination and the choice to bring good to the life around us. Evil matters not because it is an offense to the God of the heavens, but rather because it undermines, quote, life-giving relationships of love and justice in human affairs, leaving tragedy and broken hearts in its wake, quote, unquote, as Parker put it. The liberal theologian Walter Rauschenbach said, Self-centeredness is the root cause of our failures with each other. Self-centeredness causes evil and opposes the common good. When we make evil choices, we disrupt harmony, and when we choose to do good, we promote harmony. And here comes part 2.
Before I continue reading, I just want to point out that when we're talking about Christianity here, we're really talking about fundamentalist Christianity. There's a kind of a more liberal version of Christianity that is probably more in keeping with Unitarian Universalism as regards evil. In 2016, Stephen Polikas, an Episcopal priest, wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times about evil as he wrestled with his responsibility as a figure of moral authority. In the article, he asks, how are people of faith to respond to evil? He states emphatically that we cannot destroy evil. Polinkas gives the example of the war in Iraq. About 3,000 people were killed on 9/11, but the US effort to wipe out evil, the evil of 9/11, resulted in the loss of 460,000 lives in Iraq. Did that war eliminate evil? No war ever has. If we attempt to destroy evil with a violent action, we only perpetuate and amplify its effects. We don't restore harmony this way. If retaliation adds to disharmony, what do well-intentioned people do? Efforts to tear down democratic institutions, such as the sanctity of the electoral process, the president taking the word of a Russian leader over our own intelligence services, pressuring allied governments to create false narratives against political opponents. We would argue that these actions rise to the level of evil. Evil is a particularly human construction. Tornadoes, floods, earthquakes, although devastating, are not evil. Evil is what we do to each other. As Unitarian Universalist minister Judith Mayer put it, evil is not in the universe, but in human nature. UU minister Abi Janamanchi, and I hope I didn't butcher his name, writes, I see evil as the willful separation from and lack of concern for the common good. Evil occurs when the capacity for empathy exists and is ignored, when better alternatives for being in right relationship are ignored, when we fail to act on the imperative to correct the discrepancy between what is and what ought to be, and when we resist our powerful impulses to be and to do good. In his study of evil, Polinkas turned to the work of Paul Ricoeur, a philosopher whose concerns grew from his conflict with the manifest evil, from his contact with the manifest evil in 20th century France. Ricoeur was orphaned when his father was killed in World War I. While serving in the French military, he was captured by the Germans in 1940 and spent 5 years as a prisoner of war. According to Polinkas, Ricoeur believed that evil exists beyond the limits of reason, and therefore what matters is not just that we identify evil, but that we respond to it appropriately. He rightly observes that the tragedy of evil is not the act, it is not the act committed, but the experience of the victim. Separating evil perpetrated from evil suffered shifts the concern from what or who is evil to the best possible action in the face of it. Not a solution, but rather a response. In the common conception, solutions to evil require retribution, and the most obvious way to achieve retribution is through violence. Responses, on the other hand, engender what Ricoeur calls wisdom, an unwavering commitment to relieve and prevent suffering. In our troubled times, there are initiatives within church and civic organizations, such as Braver Angels, in which our UU member Chris Corfanta and I believe Dave Carlson are involved, to help citizens navigate the gaps that separate political and religious groups, seeking ways to communicate more effectively with those we disagree with and who disagree with us. In order to bridge these gaps and achieve wider harmony in our civic life, we must learn to address our common problems by identifying common values or points of view we recognize in each other. Church Next, an Episcopal initiative, summarized the main ideas in a recent video class called Civil Conversations in Uncivil Times, Practicing Our Faith in the Public Square. And they made 4 points. 1, it is essential to remain one people, not demonizing the other as we struggle over our differences. 2, we must act with humility and rely on shared goals and values. 3, we should search out places where we could work together to enact good policies, bringing love, sympathy, empathy, and humility to the table, and playing the long game. And finally, 4, we should show the world that we live what we say we believe, that is, show them, not tell them. Of course, the challenge is in the details. We are essentially in a struggle with fundamentalism that casts the struggle of good and evil in mythical, but not in human terms. It makes sense to us that we are on higher ground, since the conflict is a major disruption in our civil life and our ability to self-govern with common goals. Both sides need to back away from demonizing the other in order to live together, and we must learn how to better connect with our adversaries. We must learn to be one human group, seeking common goals. Hopefully, we are on the verge of turning that corner. Here are some words of UU Minister Patrick O'Neill on the nature of evil. Radical fundamentalism casts human existence as an epic, ongoing, still undecided battle between the forces of good and evil, of divine versus the demonic. This is the most primitive human myth of all and the most powerful. Wherever humanity has walked, wherever it has gathered to hear fables at firesides or to offer rituals around altars, good versus evil is the story at its most elemental and descriptive. We UUs do not have an easy solution of the theology that blames all evil on the workings of the devil. But many of us have witnessed unspeakable acts that can only be described as evil in Auschwitz, Cambodia, Dresden, Rwanda, and in the barbarity of biological germ warfare. Some formalists would argue that the very existence of evil in the world would seem to negate our humanistic valuing of the dignity and worth of every person, expressed in the first principle of Unitarian Universalism. But it seems to us just the opposite is true. Our cherishing that principle leads us to live by a more positive view of human nature that is antithetical to radical fundamentalism and the notion of original sin. The witness and mission of liberal religion have always been to seek liberation of the human spirit. In the words of the hymn, "From the bonds of narrow thought and lifeless creed." We stand willing to testify for a religious approach grounded in human possibility rather than pathology. Our starting place is the exaltation of the human spirit rather than its denigration. People are almost equally capable of both good and evil, but most of the time, say maybe 3 times out of 5, people choose the good. The seesaw tilts just a few degrees toward the good in this tentative world. But those few degrees are the difference between peace and Armageddon. The job of the church is to put the few stubborn ounces of our weight on the side of goodness and press down for all we're worth. In closing, we want to affirm that in order to help promote harmony in our civic life together, we are called to identify evil, that which opposes the common good, and then to respond to it in non-violent and positive ways. We need to protect the vulnerable and heal those harmed. We must work to maintain inner harmony so that we are better able to address the evil and disharmony in our civic life together. Thank you for listening, and let us now share a hymn. One more step.
Yeah. And as at this point in our morning, we turn to the offering basket, reminding everyone that we still have financial needs to keep the building going and maintained, as well as other expenses. So if you can, please consider a contribution to the fellowship. You can send a check made out to the
UU Fellowship,
UU Fellowship Treasurer, care of Ramona Stein, 1519 Sugarland Drive, B206 in Sheridan, or from our website, utilize the SheridanUU.org at Tithely, which is tithe.le, I guess. Anyway, you can go to our weekly SheridanUU.org, but also it's at the bottom of our
There's a link right on the order of service.
on the order of service. That's what I was trying to say. So with this in mind, please join me in blessing the offering. And that is, no, here. Let this be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is so sacred to many of us, a community of memory and hope, for we are the keepers of the dream. Our closing words come from Wendell Berry in his book, The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives might be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. And we invite discussion. Yeah, I'll ask Victor to join me up here, and we invite comments for discussion.
Don't everybody talk at once. You're all deep in thought.
I just want to say I really appreciate your talk, and it's so relevant to what's going on, and we can't continue to ignore the fact that there's a lot of evil in this country. We wouldn't have the president we have or the support he's getting if we didn't have some serious problems. So I appreciate the talk and just try to feel peaceful about how we might make things better.
Thanks.
I would just like to say this talk was very timely for me. My son just registered for the selective service this week, and so it's been rattling around in my head.
What?
The selective service.
Oh, selective service.
And then you said something right after that. That's Greg, right? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, it was Greg.
We couldn't hear the last thing you said when you said your son registered for the selective service, and then there were several words we didn't hear.
Some of the topics that you two talked about were clinking around in my head in terms of his looking at and thinking about, and he and I thinking about whether he is a conscientious objector or not. That's more than I said before, but that's kind of where my headspace is. So I appreciated your comments today.
And we realize that this short talk simplifies a lot of very complicated issues. And we want to acknowledge that it's not simple, but the issues are so important that we thought we needed to just iterate some of them.
Chris, you were gonna make a comment.
Hi, thanks. I really appreciated how you put in a short talk. Bill, would you quit letting me, please? There's chopping in the background. So that you put in a succinct way information about evil, and I really appreciated, especially evil as being self-centered. And I also really appreciated Eve being curious. I like that. And then I also wanted to put in a plug for Braver Angels. I'm putting in the website braverangels.org. There's a Hold America Together letter that I invite everybody to read and sign on, because after the election, it will be undecided for a while, I expect. And there's some good tools to host gatherings of friends that feel similarly and support each other in ways that we can hold, not let hate and despair reach us, but to work toward the common good. So thank you.
Some of the things that we read as a part of this, and I know that you're aware of, is that over the past 40 or so years are, there are different expressions, but the bumpers kind of have gotten knocked off in terms of comportment in public life, what it's not okay to say, or what it's not okay to accuse the opposition of. And we've gotten to a place where anything goes, anything nasty can be said, and we there's a tendency to make the opposition into something bad and dismissed as just without merit. And so as we try to find our way back, we need to work, of course, to reduce that verbal violence that is slung around all the time, as well as the untruthfulness, and try to regain the perspective that the other side has a valid point of view, and within our points of view, there are common values. And I think that's a lot of what your work is. Is that right, Chris? Thanks.
I was just going to remark that I appreciated so much of what this talk was about, because I, like many people, really struggle with friends and acquaintances who I know are not evil people, and yet so many of the positions they're supporting, to me, are evil. And it's just a real dilemma how to wrap your heart and spirit around that concept. So thank you.
I'm glad it helped a little bit.
Thanks for that comment, Jolynn.
I was just wondering about what you said, Janet, about the bumpers coming off. And I guess, like, I kind of have a thought that, ever since Robert left, I feel like I need to sometimes be the contrarian a little bit. So I miss that guy. I kind of think I might be the contrarian on the other side of the political spectrum, though, because I think I'm like more radical. So I hope that's acceptable too. I think you're absolutely right about this sense that we're getting right now that people are saying things that weren't socially acceptable. But I also think that might belie a reality that these sorts of problems and prejudices have been simmering away within our society for a long, long time. And maybe there's an aspect of the fact that people aren't being nice anymore that we might be able to, see the silver lining of that. Because I think that just like you were framing this idea that, evil is inherently bound to this self-centeredness, that it doesn't matter where you might be on the political spectrum, you might still come at your view of the world in a self-centered way.
Right.
And maybe the grease which kept this society steaming along for a really long time has been, manners and let's all just be nice. But I feel like a lot of those manners have served the interests of, the machinations which only empower the people who continue to perpetrate abuse against those who are vulnerable in the world. And so in a sense, even if we might be liberal in our views, that if we're saying, well, all we just need to do is, be nice to each other, that's coming from a pretty privileged position if we're thinking that just being nice to each other is going to solve any of these deeper systemic problems. In my view, it quite the contrary, it won't solve them. We're only through those acts of, let's be nice to each other, we're only finding a way to assuage our consciousnesses of our complicity in that. Maybe I had more of a well thought out thought than I realized I did.
So just a three-part response to that.
Sure.
So first of all, being nice doesn't mean you don't do other things, right. But creating a space in which there can be respectful dialogue is certainly important. So civility is not the total answer, but it may be the beginning of an answer. Then followed by, calling out what we see as evil, unjust, unfair. And then thirdly, making sure we are attentive to the people that are most harmed by the injustice. So let's not lose sight that beyond civility, there are other things that as Unitarian Universalists we're called to do. And as other and we're part of a liberal faith community.
Yeah.
So it's not just UUs, right? It's other liberal religious people.
Thank you, Victor.
Oh, I think over the past few years, Democrats have kind of made fun of themselves, but also recognized that, they're in a position where kind of traditionally, Democrats want to be fair and nice and Republicans want to win. And we question whether or not that our approach is sufficiently, muscular to deal with where the Republicans are coming from. But I'm interested in whether Chris or Dave have a response to Ian's comments and then Victor's response.
Dave, you want to go first?
Oh, you're still muted, Dave.
There?
There you go.
Oh, Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
The civil discourse skills that Braver Angels helps teach does not is not about coming to common ground or being nice. It's about exploring ideas and understanding each other. And a side benefit would be finding some common ground. And that the other idea, and I'm just interpreting it from my point of view, is that we need a diverse array of views to really solve the problems that are facing us. And when everybody's so afraid to speak their mind, their political views, ideas don't get out there. So it's not being nice. It's learning to listen and to discuss and to explore ideas and to question our own thoughts and our own biases. So that's just my perspective. I've been so privileged to be able to have one-on-one conversations with people who are Republicans, and we have so much more in common. And then the debates, if you've ever attended some of the national debates, we kind of get in our own echo chambers and then have thoughts about others that actually aren't true. So again, it's not being nice and covering up the issues, is my opinion.
Dave, did you want to add?
No, I think that sounds about right. I haven't been as involved as I'd like to be. I need to get back into it again. But yeah, I think what Janet said about the fact that we do need to speak up, that we've been, I think, too, I don't know. I think Democrats have been way too soft in their approach, I guess, in some ways.
How do I talk? Let me see. Can I talk? This is Barbara. What do I do to talk?
We hear you, Barbara.
There we go.
Go.
Well, listen, I kind of get it, Ian. I think I'm too kind. And then I say, well, don't rile them up. You know, they're already on the wrong track. So I think it's a problem, you know, to be committed to your opinions and know that the person you're speaking to is absolutely in the other corner. And I think I have pretty good communication skills with trying to come to the middle and, you know, share thoughts and be kind of, you know, not angry, not a real aggressive, but it's a fine line. And I think it was a really good point that you brought up, and I'm glad you did. It's kind of given me a little more get out there. Thanks. And you know, it's been lovely spending this time with everyone. I'm very happy to be here. And I'll think of Claire Andrews all day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. Maybe one more comment, and then we'll close.
I just have a comment that the questions, myself questioning today after hearing this discussion is two parts. The conflict maybe between the Dharma of the scorpion and the Dharma of the monk.
Yeah.
And also having been accused of being interested in saving and helping other people with a third party's money. And so when I feel like I'm helping, either one, I have to be careful that I'm not helping somebody who doesn't want help. And the other is insisting that others come along with me against their will to help a third party. So that's my self-reflection, and I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but thank you.
Comment?
Well, I very much was connecting the dots between the story and the talk. And at first, when I read the story, which was the first time I'd read the story, I was very curious how that story was going to connect to harmony. But it all became, everything is illuminated. And I very much was reflecting on that story too, Greg, with my interaction specifically with children and their masks and what they're hearing from home. And yeah, and it's really hard. And I had to go to my principal just to get some sanity and some wisdom, and she's very good. And although I was still struggling with it when I came home on Friday, I think I'll be, all right to go back into that. But it is absolutely, it's almost a perfect analogy for the world that we're living in right now. It's very dangerous, and
yes,
and yet this is something interesting about waking up to one's dharma. So
yeah. So the way I connect the dots between harmony and the story is that it's a story about mercy, and mercy is a way to bring harmony to the world. And that also the meditation was a way to say, I need to have peace within myself. And then when I have that peace within myself, I can also wish for peace for others and for the world. And if I'm angry, I really can't help promote, I can't really counter evil, right? I can't counter evil when I'm full of rage. I can only counter evil when I am calm and when I am merciful.
there seems to be something alchemical about the role of the monk and his meditation on compassion in the story, because the scorpion in and of itself is not an evil being.
Right.
It is armed with those, weapons of its sting and its claws as a vital and crucial part of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it's the monk's consciousness which is transmuting the pain, because he's definitely he's got the poison in him, 3 doses of it, but that is only contributing to his ongoing meditation on compassion. And I think that's something I'm going to be thinking about all week. So.
Cool. Well, I'm glad I invited you to read that story.
Yeah.
Well, with those remarks by Ian, I think we will now close the discussion and extinguish the chalice. Right here. Do you want to read, or do you want to?
Extinguish.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And those of you that want to continue discussion and fellowship, just stay on as long as you want. And thanks for participating in the service this morning.
Thanks for being with us. Have a good week.
Okay.
I have something to mention. Ian's remark just now about the scorpion not being evil. That makes me think of the fact that we're to be in harmony with the first principle, the first UU principle, that there is that of goodness, be respectful of each person as being worthy. I need to be careful not to think of people as evil.
Right.
What our president does, he perpetuates evil,
Yes.
harm.
And
But
because of
he's
self,
pardon me?
he does it because of selfishness.
Yes, yes. And I have selfishness in me. And I have the capacity to do things that I look back on and see were evil. And I'm particularly becoming aware of that in reading and doing the exercises in a book called Me and White Supremacy. It's really been good. Little passages, little sections on like white privilege and tone policing is another example. And you study that concept, and then you're asked some questions, asked to write out answers to some queries. And I read those queries and I will sometimes say, gee, well, you know, this doesn't really apply to me, but I don't write anything until the next day or the next day. And I go back to those queries and I have examples that I know I have done. So it is so easy. I want to just make it simple and think of this president and you know, the people who follow him who believe that that they can be violent to support his beliefs is very, very scary, and it's very easy just to see that them as all evil. And the same with the man who killed my family members.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But that doesn't do any good. You
No.
know, there are evil acts, but there aren't evil people really fully.
If I may comment on the white supremacy that you brought up and put it in the context of our service this morning, I would say that white supremacy is a form of evil because it opposes the common good. It puts
Right.
some people above other people. And when you put some people above other people, it opposes the common good and is therefore evil.
Thank you.
Thanks for speaking up, Georgia. It's nice to Okay, we're gonna log off. I'm assuming I don't see Sue. I'm assuming Ramona, are you gonna stick around to see if anyone wants to stay and visit?
Yep, I'll stay as long as anyone else does.
Okay, thank you
Ramona.
all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.